Operation Mongoose became one of the largest CIA covert actions throughout the Cold War. Over 600 CIA officers and thousands of contract agents were involved. The goal was to cause as much turmoil as possible within Cuba, in hopes that the people would eventually rise up against the revolutionary government. Countless sabotage plans were put into effect.
This is one of the CIA black books that was prepared during Operation Mongoose. And what it did was provide different ways to produce field expedient incendiary explosives that would help you use commonly available household items that could be converted into different explosives. And it was this type of information that was both utilized by the CIA as well as taught to the ground personnel that were on the ground in Cuba conducting operations.
One of the prime targets for attack were the processing plants of Cuba's leading export, sugar.
In Cuba, the CIA did an analysis that said essentially its only exportable product was sugar from sugarcane. And they had two choices to try to interdict it. They could attack the growing and production process or attack the shipping. It was initially decided it would be easier to attack the growing and production process. One of the ways was to destroy the generators that created power for the sugarcane processing plants.
In order to successfully aid those attempting to carry out these sabotage missions, the CIA needed an array of support devices.
In Cuba, the CIA discovered that many of the targeted sites for sabotage were protected by guard dogs, and it was necessary to find a way to incapacitate the guard dogs for a period of several hours while the sabotage equipment was prepared, but then have them wake up and be very functional to not give away to the Castro regime that devices had been planted. To do this, they came up with a concept called puppy chow. And puppy chow were tablets mixed with normal dog food. Now, a dog of normal weight would take 4 tablets. Once this was mixed with a half pound of ground beef fresh, it was tossed to the dog would eat it and simply go to sleep. The operative would have up to 4 hours to conduct the operation. But at the last minute, when they were ready to leave, if the dogs weren't coming around, they would take this syringe filled with an antidote, inject the dog. Upon receiving the antidote, the dog would be alert, unhappy, very loud, and there would be no harm done to the animal at all.
It was impossible to destroy all of Cuba's sugar processing plants. Some of the sugar had to be destroyed as it was being transported from Cuba by boat.
The CIA targeted shipping carrying sugar cane and finished sugar out of Cuba to the markets in Eastern Europe. The key to sinking the ships was a way to effectively ignite the charges, the explosives that were placed on the hull of the ship at a predetermined time after they were placed. And what they did was go back to technology from World War II. And this is a training device, but what this shows is a way to take a vial of acid, put it in a large device, you'd turn a screw which would break the acid. The acid would then eat away a small filament which would then release the spring which would cause the explosive to be ignited. And they packaged this in a way that the operative could determine the water temperature in the target area, pick a vial that was color-coded to represent the time that was necessary. This, for example, in the lavender, in the waters of Cuba, would be preset for 13 hours. They would simply then take the AC delay, open it, drop in the vial of acid, put it back together, and when it was inserted into the explosives and twisted, they had a predictable delay of 13 hours, which was more than enough time to get away. But ideally, it was also more than enough time for the ship to get out of port. So when the explosion occurred, the ship would sink at sea as opposed to in the harbor where it would be much easier to salvage.
It was also the goal of Operation Mongoose to encourage Cubans who were not supporters of the new revolutionary government to carry out their own acts of sabotage.
It was deemed necessary to create a series of sabotage pamphlets that could be distributed, hopefully, to engender a popular revolution that could be started against the Castro government. And what they did was create some very simple, effective graphic pamphlets. There are no words in them at all. And what they show is ways that the various pieces of sabotage equipment can be utilized. So regardless of your language skills, they didn't have to be translated into Spanish. Simply the graphic document themselves with the sabotage equipment gave all of the information you needed to utilize the devices.
The more simple the sabotage tool, the more likely it would be used correctly by the untrained Cubans committing the act.
Sabotage personnel operating in Cuba often needed to disable a key vehicle. And one of the ideas they had remembered from World War II was something called a caltrop. And a caltrop was a multi-pointed metal device that no matter how it was tossed out, it would always land with a sharp pointed spike upward. So if a car went over it, it would always deflate the tire. But the key was, how could you package something like this in your clothing? And they came up with the idea of a collapsible caltrop. Once the two pieces are put together, no matter how it's thrown, it always lands with a spike up. Any vehicle rolling over this would immediately deflate and damage the tire. And it proved to be effective against automobile and truck tires throughout the rural roads in Cuba.